From the battlefield in Belgorod, where Ukrainian forces reportedly strike Russia's S-400 missiles, to Europe approving $105 billion to keep Ukraine fighting, and Donald Trump is urging Kyiv to hurry peace talks before Russia gains more ground. The world is watching, and every move could change the course of this war. We are going to post from G-Man, handle @FAB87F. 2 Russian S-400 launchers were destroyed or severely damaged, along with ammunition, in Russia's Belgorod region. The strike was carried out by Ukrainian defenders from the Black Forest 15th Separate Brigade of Artillery Reconnaissance, Glory. This post claims that Ukrainian forces successfully struck and destroyed or heavily damaged Russian S-400 air defense systems inside Russia's Belgorod region. This is significant because the S-400 is one of Russia's most advanced long-range air defense systems designed to protect strategic assets from missiles and aircraft. Damage to such systems weakens Russia's ability to control airspace near the border. Belgorod has become a frequent target as Ukraine increasingly conducts cross-border strikes aimed at military infrastructure supporting Russia's war effort. These operations suggest Ukraine is shifting toward disrupting Russian logistics and air defense rather than only defending territory. Overall, this highlights the expanding scope of the conflict and the increasing vulnerability of rear-area Russian military assets. We are going to our next post from Alex Raflu, handle @RaulAkbar. New: Trump's team launches a Miami blitz to end Russia's war in Ukraine. This weekend's talks in Florida promise momentum, but signals from Putin, anxiety in Europe, and a race against political impatience suggest the hardest part may be just beginning. This post highlights a new diplomatic push linked to former President Donald Trump's team, signaling renewed efforts to influence an end to the Russia-Ukraine war through talks in the United States. The mention of meetings in Miami suggests informal or back-channel diplomacy rather than official government negotiations. While the talks are framed as creating momentum, the post also underlines major obstacles: unclear intentions from Vladimir Putin, growing concern among European allies, and pressure from domestic political timelines in the U.S. European anxiety reflects fears that any rushed deal could favor Russia or weaken Ukraine's long-term security. At the same time, political impatience points to the challenge of sustaining public and political support for prolonged negotiations. Overall, this shows that while diplomacy is accelerating, the path to a real settlement remains complex, fragile, and deeply political. We are going to our next post from Mimi, handle @Mimi_KA. Europe agrees to a $105 billion funding plan for Ukraine. Note, this reflects reports that European leaders reached a major agreement on financial support for Ukraine, The Guardian. European Union leaders have agreed on a roughly $105 billion package to support Ukraine's defense and economic needs over the next 2 years, despite disagreements about how to fund it, The Guardian. The financing will take the form of an interest-free loan backed by EU budget borrowing instead of using directly frozen Russian central bank assets, a plan that many EU members, especially Belgium, opposed due to legal and financial risks, The Guardian. This funding boost comes at a critical moment as Kyiv faces a looming budget shortfall and continuing military pressure from Russia. Western allies have been debating how to maintain support, especially after shifts in U.S. foreign policy, and Europe's deal signals strong, continued backing, even if the mechanism is complex. Le Monde.fr. In the broader conflict, sustaining financial support for Ukraine is essential to keeping its armed forces supplied and government functions stable while negotiations and battlefield operations continue. The Guardian. We are going to our next post from Tariq Hussein, handle @Tariq1838609. Trump says Russia's army is taking too much land and Kyiv needs to hurry to make peace. According to the U.S. president, agreements may soon be reached. Trump stated that every time Russian forces take more territory, Russia changes its position and could increase its demands. He suggested that Ukraine should act quickly, as further Russian advances could harden Moscow's stance. The Post also claims that the United States is demanding Ukraine withdraw troops from Donbass in exchange for security guarantees. This post reflects reported remarks attributed to Donald Trump, emphasizing urgency in reaching a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine as Russian forces continue territorial advances. The core message is strategic pressure. As Russia captures more ground, its negotiating position strengthens, potentially leading to tougher demands from Moscow. This aligns with a common pattern in conflict negotiations, where battlefield momentum directly affects diplomacy. The mention of a possible U.S. demand for Ukrainian withdrawal from Donbass is particularly controversial. Such a move would represent a major concession for Kyiv and would raise serious concerns in Ukraine and across Europe about long-term security and sovereignty. Overall, this highlights growing debate over whether speed or leverage should define peace talks and underscores the risk that delayed negotiations could narrow Ukraine's options as the war evolves. We are going to our next post from Tendar, handle @Tendar. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones discovered 2 Russian S-400 air defense launchers moving 50 kilometers inside Russia's Belgorod region. Drones were launched and both launchers were struck and destroyed. This post highlights a significant Ukrainian military operation inside Russian territory. Reconnaissance drones detected 2 S-400 air defense systems deep in Belgorod, about 50 kilometers from the border, and strike drones were deployed to destroy them. If confirmed, this demonstrates Ukraine's growing ability to conduct precision attacks on high-value targets beyond its own territory, challenging Russia's control of key military assets. Striking S-400 systems weakens Russia's air defense capabilities, potentially affecting the protection of nearby military infrastructure. This operation also reflects a broader strategic shift. Ukraine is increasingly using advanced surveillance and drone technology, not just for defense, but to disrupt Russian logistics and air defense operations inside Russia, adding a new layer of pressure to the ongoing conflict.
We are going to our next post from Phoenix TV HK, handle @Phoenix TV HK. U.S. President Donald Trump called on Ukraine to move quickly on a deal to end the war with Russia. Speaking to reporters in the Oval Office, Trump said he hopes Ukraine acts fast because Russia is already advancing. He added that every time Ukraine takes too long, Russia changes its position. This post highlights direct comments from Donald Trump urging Ukraine to accelerate negotiations to end the war with Russia. Trump's remarks suggest a belief that time favors Moscow. As Russian forces continue operations in the battlefield, delays in diplomacy could strengthen Russia's leverage and lead to harsher terms in any future agreement. This framing places pressure squarely on Kyiv, implying that hesitation may result in lost bargaining power. However, for Ukraine, moving quickly also carries risks, as rush negotiations could force concessions on territory or security arrangements. The statement reflects a broader debate shaping the conflict, whether speed toward peace can reduce losses or whether holding firm is necessary to avoid an unfavorable settlement. It also signals how U.S. political leadership could influence the direction of future peace talks. We are going to our next post from Richard, handle @RICWE123. Putin does not need Ukraine. He doesn't need Europe. Damn it, he already has enough land of his own. He just wants to make sure that there are no United States weapons in Ukraine aimed at Moscow. Tommy Tuberville, U.S. Senator. This post quotes U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville, offering an interpretation of Vladimir Putin's motivations in the Ukraine conflict. According to the quote, Putin's primary goal is not territorial expansion in Ukraine or Europe, but rather to prevent Western military influence, specifically U.S. weapons, near Russia's borders. This framing suggests that the conflict is driven more by security concerns and strategic control than simple territorial ambition. If this perspective is accurate, it emphasizes why Russia strongly opposes the provision of Western arms to Ukraine, and why negotiations over military aid remain highly contentious. Overall, this quote highlights the strategic calculations underpinning Russia's actions. Controlling the battlefield is not just about land, but about shaping regional military power and limiting threats near Moscow. We are going to our next post from Yum Rat Muffins, handle at Yum Rat Muffins. 100% propaganda. Russia does not want Europe or even Ukraine. Russia came to save Donbass, and in Donbass it has remained. Ukrainians are being fed lies to keep them in line. Russia has become far stronger through the SMO, Special Military Operation, and Ukraine will not get more war funding because the Kiev regime allegedly stole billions. This post presents a pro-Russian perspective on the Ukraine conflict, emphasizing that Russia's stated objective is the Donbass region, rather than a broader territorial expansion into Europe or Ukraine. The claim suggests that propaganda influences Ukrainian civilians and that Russian forces have strengthened due to the ongoing SMO, Special Military Operation. While some claims, such as alleged corruption in Kiev, reflect political narratives circulating in Russian-aligned media, it's important to view them critically. This post underscores the role of information warfare in shaping perceptions on both sides of the conflict, with both Russia and Ukraine leveraging narratives to support their political and military objectives. We are going to our next post from Mario Naufal, handle at Mario Naufal. Zelensky, I want Russia's reparation loan and I want it now. Zelensky is pressing the EU, saying Ukraine cannot wait. Frozen Russian billions must be unlocked immediately to fill funding gaps. He frames it as a reparations loan, holding Russia financially accountable for the destruction caused by the war. Zelensky says, basically, as of today, now Ukraine must close this problem and have the money. That's number one. About the prospects, the most right form is reparations loan, so that we all understand, so that Russia understands that it's guilty and that it will have to pay. This push comes amid an EU summit over a $105 billion package, funded partly by frozen Russian assets, even as legal concerns and U.S. warnings loom. Zelensky argues this is moral, fair, and a necessary pressure tool to make Putin back down. This post highlights Ukrainian President Zelensky's strong demand for Russia to provide reparations, framing the frozen Russian assets as a moral and legal obligation to compensate for the destruction caused by the war. By calling it a reparations loan, Zelensky positions Ukraine not only as defending itself militarily, but also as pursuing justice through financial accountability. This demand ties directly into ongoing EU deliberations over a $105 billion package for Ukraine, which partially relies on the frozen Russian assets. While these funds could stabilize Ukraine's budget and military operations, there are legal hurdles and diplomatic sensitivities, including concerns raised by U.S. officials. Overall, this post illustrates how Ukraine is leveraging financial, moral, and diplomatic strategies alongside battlefield operations, signaling to both Moscow and Western allies that Ukraine is determined to hold Russia accountable while maintaining international support for its war effort. The war in Ukraine continues to escalate on multiple fronts. Ukrainian forces reportedly struck deep into Russia's Belgorod region, destroying or severely damaging 2 S-400 air defense launchers and ammunition. Operations like this show Ukraine's growing ability to target critical Russian military assets beyond its borders, disrupting air defenses and logistics. Meanwhile, Europe has approved a historic $105 billion funding plan for Ukraine, ensuring Kiev can sustain its military and government functions. This decision signals strong long-term Western support, even as some EU countries worry about financial and legal risks. Political pressure is mounting as well. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has urged Ukraine to act quickly in peace talks, warning that delays could strengthen Russia's negotiation position. Every territorial gain by Moscow, he says, could harden their demands, making timely negotiations crucial. U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville also emphasizes that Russia's key goal is preventing Western weapons from reaching Ukraine, highlighting the strategic nature of the conflict beyond territorial ambitions. Taken together, these developments show a conflict that is intensifying on the battlefield, in diplomacy, and in global politics. Ukrainian forces are striking hard, Europe is backing Kiev financially, and U.S. leaders are pushing for rapid negotiation, all while Russia continues to pursue both military gains and strategic control. The war in Ukraine is no longer about territory. It's about global power, strategy, and the urgent choices that could shape the future of Europe and the world.